Hey guys, my name's Jared Alderman. Thank you for watching. Today we have Jason Su. Jason is a mental coach and a performance coach. He deals specifically with the concept of remaining present when trying to perform at our best in high pressure situations and in low pressure situations, even. So we have a great conversation. Jason is my first return guest. He was the first person to kick off our conversations here on the show, and it was great to have him back. So enjoy.
All right. Awesome. Jason, welcome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I love jamming out with you. So
Yeah.
excited to do whatever it is we're about to do here. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we're just gonna I know people always come into this a little blind. I never quite tell people. Well, to be fair, I like to just like keep it fairly light and just see kind of what happens. Um, cool. But yeah, first off, I wanted to start talking to you about well, one, we both just had new girls. I had a girl, you
Yeah,
had a
let's
girl.
go. Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
so yeah, I was talking to you a little bit before we started recording, but yeah, it's going well though. You excited? You loving it?
Yeah. Yeah, everything's great. Life's obviously a lot different. I have no free time now, but I also don't want it back either. So it's
Yeah.
like it's one of those things where you can't really prepare for it. But yeah, it's just the greatest thing ever.
It for me when I first had my son, it was like this internal like reminder of time changing and how fast time's moving. It was just honestly, it was like giving me so much anxiety at first. I was like, things change so fast. And I think I assumed like the first year was what the next, 18 years was going to feel like, where it's just like a constant change, especially from like, I don't know, from 3 months to like a year old. There's just like constantly new benchmarks like kids are hitting, and it's pretty
Mm.
bizarre, just how fast kids are changing.
Yeah, the thing about time for sure, because I've always been super punctual and I never forget stuff, but
Mhm.
then ever since, the baby came, there'll be people who will message me and I'll be like, yeah, yeah, I'll get back to you in like later today. And then I'll look back and it's like, wait, it's been 3 days since I said that. Like, what just happened? My perception of time has completely warped. It's not
Yeah,
even close to the same. Yeah.
yeah, it's bizarre. Awesome, man. Well, that's great to hear. I'm super happy for you. That's awesome. Kids are amazing. I love being a dad. I didn't think I'd love
Mhm.
being a dad, but like it's one of my favorite things in the whole world.
Mhm.
But along the same note, man, I've never actually asked you this. Tell me a bit about, and for those who don't know you, tell me a bit about like your story. Like, where did you come from? How did you get to doing what you're doing? And what is it you do, for people who don't know?
Um, what I actually do is hard to describe in words, so I'll do my best. But
Yeah.
if I want to go back to the beginning, yeah, I grew up in Houston, and when I went to college up in Austin, I was just starting to get into poker then. The last semester of senior year, we're all just slacking off, and the teachers have stopped teaching, and my friend is like, "Hey, let me show you poker." This is 2002, so it's before Moneymaker, before everything, and so he's like showing me how to play poker, and I'm like, this is pretty awesome. And he invites me to a home game where the buy-in's $10. And I remember I broke exactly even that day. I remember I cashed out exactly $10, but I was like hooked. That was like all I could think about for the next however many uh years of my life, and
Right.
off to college. And it really changed what my college experience was like, because if I hadn't found poker, I probably would have partied and chased girls and done all that stuff. But I did basically zero of that, and all I was doing was like trying to find the next poker game and spending all my time with like lawyers and doctors and drug dealers and everything else in between, playing these underground cash games. And just kind of went from there. Ended up playing for a living for many years, and then found that as I was like coaching and staking people, I actually really enjoyed helping them with the mental game, the inner game of what
Yeah.
it takes to succeed at poker. And a lot of the conversations were just going there. And so eventually I just started writing and wrote my book, Poker with Presence. Had no expectations for it. I was like, maybe I can get all my friends to buy it and I'll sell 100 copies. And it's still selling really well. And even better, right away people started messaging me asking me for coaching just on this. And
Mm.
so very quickly I was able to have this choice of, if I don't want to I don't have to keep playing poker for a living if I don't want to, because I can have a really good business doing this. And so for me, after almost 2 decades of playing poker for a living, it was pretty clear as like, yeah, I would love to do this new thing now, and still be connected to the poker world, still get to play when I feel like it. And so that's kind of what I'm up to.
It's amazing. Yeah. What is so? I've in passing conversation with you, you've mentioned like some kind of formal research or training you've done and some things. What is that exactly?
Yeah, in 2012, I was in a kind of weird place in my life with poker, not sure if I wanted to keep going, kind of burned out essentially is the gist of it.
Yeah.
And came upon a 2-year intensive training program with a couple of PhD psychotherapists, Katie Hendricks, Gay Hendricks of the Hendricks Institute.
Okay.
It was a rolling 2-year program that they ran for like 30 years. It ended when COVID came
Uh.
along. And but yeah, it was mostly therapists enroll in this program to
Right.
enhance their ability to like connect with their clients. I just joined because I thought it looked awesome and I wanted to learn more about myself.
Mm,
And in the process, I had no idea we were going to be doing this, but a majority of the program was learning how to just be with other people as they work through their problems, and help them through it. And as I was going through the training, I was like, wow, I'm actually like quite good at this.
mm,
And maybe I could use it some way in my own poker game. So this is how I came back to poker, because when I first joined that program, I was convinced I was done and I was never going to play poker again. But then as I was going through the program, helping
mm,
people with their issues, I was like, oh, I could just use this and apply this to myself. And within a year, I'm back playing poker full time, and completely changed my relationship to the game to where I was
mm,
completely loving every session and getting better again each day. It felt like it was the
mm.
beginning of poker again. And,
Yeah.
and so from there until the end of me playing full time, it was just I loved the game and I was playing basically my A game 98, 99% of the time. And so that just felt like a great experience to have, because otherwise it felt like I was going to go out of poker on kind of a low note, and instead I got to just go out on a really high note on my terms.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. That's an amazing thing. You say that. So I've started doing more mental coaching. Been loving it. Been really enjoying it. And one of the things that I've often used as an analogy, and I haven't found the parallels like to even like the context that you were saying, but I often talk to people about the analogy of what it like feels like to be present in conversation. That's like one of the best things that I use as like an analogy, because it's very cerebrally intensive, and one of the big things that you can it also, like, for people, I think they have a very good sense of what it qualitatively feels like to be like really present in a conversation, really connecting with somebody, really engaging, and like that sort of free flowing state, and what it feels like to be really in your head, like really, self-reflective, like really, self-critical, and like really like wondering what everyone's thinking of you. And I often use that as an analogy for just like mental states in poker. It's like a very similar sense of yeah. So yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So one of the things that, well, I guess let's line out a little bit more clearly exactly the like what would you say differentiates, because you mentioned now you're doing like more mental work, more work with people on the inner game. What is your there is a we do have a conversation on my podcast. So you were actually the first person I did that was like, it wasn't even a podcast at the point, but you're the first person to come on and me sort of talk to publicly. So for people who want to go, I guess I'll actually just point people to that. That's a really good conversation. We really get into the details of like what it is you do, what is presence. What I was hoping actually this conversation could be is go get a little bit deeper, a little bit more into the weeds, a little bit more on like what are some of the common like easy ways to misconstrue things that I think exist out there. And also just like I'm curious, some of the ways that you and I view things a tad differently, and fleshing some of that out. So I guess one of the first questions that I had that I would be fun to talk about is this idea of thoughts. And I've heard one of on our prior conversation, we were doing it on a live Twitch stream, and someone said like, don't your thoughts affect your emotions? And you were saying more often that you feel that it is your emotions that affect your thoughts more heavily. How do you view Are you familiar with CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy?
Not enough to like speak intelligently about it, no.
Sure. So I'm curious, this is a form of therapy, funny enough, also, but it's something that I draw somewhat heavily on when I try to work with people. And it is very much this idea that like you can control your emotional state and your mental state by intentionally thinking things and intentionally acting in different ways. Basically, do you believe there's like some room for what is conventional mental game, which is very much just like stop thinking about things in the way that you think about them? And how do you merge sort of that, any ideas that you believe, like any validity that you see in that, with this idea of just being present and just accepting what you feel and like getting out of your head, if you will?
Yeah,
Big question.
I like the question because it lets me bash traditional mental game once again, which is kind of my favorite thing to do. If you follow me on the internet, you know
Yeah.
this is the thing I'll just do all the time. Because it genuinely upsets me. It genuinely
Mm,
drives me crazy to have people telling other people to stop like thinking what you're thinking and just don't think about it, and then that's what's
mm,
going to fix the problem, because you are in zero control over the thoughts that come through your mind, right? Because
yeah.
if I tell you anytime, like when we were adolescents, and if let's say we were bummed out, the girl I had a crush on turned me down, and your friend says, oh, just don't think about her, man, just don't think about her. And did did that ever do anything? Did you ever think
Yeah.
about her anyways? I know I didn't, right? I don't know anybody who
Yeah.
that was successful for. And so this is like exactly what almost every mental game coach is telling their people, is like, oh, you're upset, just don't think about it, just think about what's good, just look on the bright side.
Mm,
you
yeah.
you
Yeah.
got you got your money in with the best hand, that's all you can do, just shake it off
Mm,
and let's go and play the next hand, buck up, right? And that is not only not possible, but it's also like somewhat condescending in tone
yeah.
of like, yeah,
Yeah.
all you have to do, man, like, can't you see how simple it is? Just don't think about it. And really, there's only one way that I've ever seen that actually works to get people through this situation, to where if you don't want to think about that, bad beat or whatever you're upset about anymore, you have to go to what is creating the thought in your mind anyways, right? And so it's always, from what I can tell, it's always like a visceral sensation or emotion that's happening in your
Mm,
body, in your nervous system,
mm,
that if you're not with that feeling, if you're not present with that sensation, that emotion,
yeah.
the way that you start to experience it is in your head as thought, right?
Yeah.
So, I've got a client today running deep in the 25K at the World Series. I was
Mm,
talking to him last night. He's very excited. He's like, man, my mind just keeps going towards like, what if I win? What if I win?
yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, how can I, I don't want to like keep thinking about that. And what I told him was, well, you can't do anything about that, but what you can do is notice when you're having that thought and take it as a sign that there's this excitement inside you
Yeah.
that you're not really
Mm,
letting yourself enjoy and feel all the
mm,
way, right? And so
yeah.
all you got to do is just notice the thought and then bring it in and say, oh, I'm actually just really excited. That the excitement is what's driving the thought, right? And so when somebody takes a bad beat and they're really upset about it, they can't let it go. Well, you keep cycling through it in your mind because you're not actually letting yourself feel the pain, the
Mm,
frustration, the anger, the sadness that you are genuinely experiencing. And so you
yeah.
experience it only in your mind. So these mental game coaches, they say, just dump it out of your mind. Well, all of this is still happening deep inside you. So you dump that thought, that lasts for maybe 5 seconds, then you just go back and do it later, or just like
Mm,
go punt to your next hand, right? And so that's the rant. That's it.
yeah. Yeah. I have a few, man, there's so many threads to pull on here. The first one that I'm going to hit that I'm curious is one of the common things when I'm working with people that I get when I'm talking through this sort of process of like, yeah, you're in your head, you're experiencing these things, and like the experience of being present. I've often gotten pushback from people. I shouldn't say often. A couple of times I've gotten pushback from people, and I think I've received it more of people I don't directly work with. But how does that work? Like, why does that do anything different? Like, why does, right? Like, like I want to, I'm working with somebody who, wants to make better decisions. Let's say they don't have any particular like massive tilt problems, right? It's not like they're just like blowing up, but they just feel like they're not executing at their best. How does being present change anything? Like, this is a big like comment that I've gotten that I've had a hard time explaining to people. And
Yeah.
I'm curious what you would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. I would go deeper, like present with what, right?
Yeah,
So if you got the student who, and anybody who's coached, and we all have some version of this we've done before, is like, if I'm talking hands with somebody, I just always know the answer. It's no problem. My friend who plays stakes higher than me, I'm better than him at breaking down the hands. Why is he playing higher than me?
sure.
Well, it's not a knowledge problem, right? Because I prove my knowledge day after day, over and over, when
Yeah,
I'm studying. I've got this. I know exactly what to do. But when I'm in the chair, I can't do it, right?
yeah,
And so what's my problem? My problem is there's probably fear,
yeah,
low to mid-level fear running through me all the time when I'm playing, which is normal because our money is on the line, our in our mind, our
yeah,
reputation is on the line, our dreams are on the line each session, right? We're either always moving toward our goals or away, depending on if we win or lose. There's always so much at stake that we build it up. And so
yeah,
there's some fear always when we play. If there's not, we're probably playing too low, right? So it's normal, it's natural. You should feel some fear each time you play. It's healthy. It's not healthy to pretend it's not there, to not be present with it.
yeah,
So being present with the fear and treating it like it's no big deal. It's just, it is there. It's okay. There's
yeah,
nothing wrong with me because I'm feeling fear. Embrace it, feel it.
yeah,
Now you can go back to showing up as the version of you that is just like, boom, I know the answer. Oh, I know exactly what to do here. The answer is this because of that.
yeah,
That's who you are when you're talking hands, because you're not in any of that fear.
yeah.
That's literally the
Mm,
only difference between you then and you when you can't do it in game.
mm. That's a good point to bring up. Like, what is the difference? Because for me, like, I've often it's would be, because for, let's say you take that example, I say, yeah, you're feeling fear, and like, you're talking about being present with it. I often get like, well, why does that make me act differently? Right? Like, that's like a lot of people. And for me, for that, it's like, this is kind of just something you have to experience firsthand, in my opinion. Like, it's just like, you kind of just have to, until you feel the difference of fear having this narrative control, like you've gripped into this belief of the story in your mind of what is the situation, and like you're gripped by this mentally, versus when you're like experiencing the raw data. It's just like, what is making you act is this story. And it's very hard to, like, for people who are skeptical of this, it's very hard to sort of like pass that knowledge along through words. It's like, just, it really is sort of experiential. But the analogy that is good, that I really liked that you used, is like, what is the difference between the mental state you're in when discussing things and when you're in the game? But I could also, to sort of see where people's heads might go with this, I could also see people as like, well, yeah, of course I'm not afraid, like there's no stakes. How does being present in the moment that I'm afraid change what I might do in that moment? Like, I'm still afraid, like the stakes are
Mhm.
real.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
Well, it's not about making the fear go away, right? So that would
Yeah,
be kind of like, that would kind of be trying to like go back to that old belief system of like, oh yeah, the goal is to not be afraid. See it all
yeah,
the time. Sports commentators, they're just like, yeah, you got to push the fear aside. So
yeah,
it's heavily ingrained in our society to
yeah,
push the fear aside, especially for men, right? Because men who admit that they feel fear get called names that are
yeah.
not kind, right? And
Right,
and
right, sure.
so and so we're all taught, especially men, to not admit that we feel scared, and so it's deep. It runs deep as far as the conditioning. So it's not about I'm going to be present with the fear so that it melts away. It's I'm going to be present with the fear so that I'm operating out of a state where I'm completely honest with where I'm at right now. And
Yeah,
that's where you're at when you're just talking shop with your friend, is
right.
you're completely honest about where you're at. You don't have to think about it because it's just relaxed and easy. So you have no problem just acknowledging that you're feeling relaxed and easy. Whereas in the fear, you have a problem acknowledging that, oh, there's lots of energy, lots of fear running through me right now. And so it's the resistance of it. It's the turning away from it that creates the disconnection. It's not the fear itself that's the problem. It's that you're not engaging with it in a way that's honest and real.
Yeah. And one thing I usually point to for people too is like the actions you're taking in the moment of fear, those are actions like trying to fix the fear. Like trying to fix the fear is what's causing you to do the things that you wish to stop doing. It is when you don't mind feeling fear, then you don't mind, like, then, you know, I mentioned this in our last conversation, but like the behavioral implication of this feeling, having this feeling and saying like, this means I must do something with this, that goes away. And then you're sort of freed up to do whatever it is you feel is best, right? Just like, so you mentioned something. I just wanted to get that out of the way because I could see this getting a little distorted by people listening for the first time. But in our, you know, in the last conversation about thoughts, how do you parse the difference between like thinking things and but then the power of belief in certain moments, right? Because like certainly you can't think certain things, but from my view, there is a palpable difference to the things you believe differently from moment to moment. And it's a little harder to parse like what is belief. Like this becomes a deep philosophical question, you know what I mean? Is it, but there's clearly a sustainable difference from thoughts that I just tend to have and those thoughts representing something I deeply believe is true. So for example, if I believe I must win this next tournament or no one will respect me, right? If that's a belief I have. Now it might be showing itself by thoughts that I have, but just changing those thoughts, you know, by pure will is not going to change the belief that I have. But that belief certainly holds some measure of what's pulling the levers of how I feel in certain moments, if that makes sense. I guess I'll just push that to you, see how you're.
Yeah. I'm gonna say that this, in my experience, is like a real kind of heady analytical discussion. And the simplest way that I experience it is that, you know, sometimes we believe all the thoughts that we're having,
Yeah.
and sometimes we don't, right? And the thing
Yeah.
that will determine whether we can just see it for, oh yeah, that's just a thought I'm having, I don't need to believe it, versus, oh yeah, that's definitely true, is just going to come back again to, well, how deep in the fear am I, right? It tends to be just a direct one-to-one correlation. The more deeply I am kind of just hooked into the fear and not being present with it, the more likely I am to just completely latch on to every thought that comes into my head. So if we translate it to poker, if I'm deeply in this fear and I have the thought, oh, this guy's coming after me, well, then he's definitely coming after me, right? And I have to do something about it. I got to play back at him. I got to make this hero call. I got to run this sick bluff. When I am feeling calm, relaxed, present, easy about it, the exact same thought can roll through my mind. Oh, this guy's coming after me. But then there's a lightness to it. There's a curiosity, there's an opening. That may be true, that may be not. I'm honestly not sure. But the more certain the thought becomes, the more you can be certain that you're latched into that state of fear. So, you know, what do we actually believe? What are we just thinking? That's all just dependent on how we feel in each moment. We could, you know, you can have a conversation with me or anybody else about something, and I'll be like, yeah, this is what I believe, man. And then an hour later, I could be like, nah, actually, like, nah, I can walk that back. I'm open to having this discussion about it, right?
Yeah, this is interesting. I because on the one hand, I totally see what you're saying, right? Like we are different people from moment to moment. Like what it means to believe something depends on the moment you catch me in, you know? And yeah, like I could think a movie is great because I don't like you and you seem to like it a lot. You seem to dislike it, right? Like suddenly I love this movie because I want to disagree with you, you know, or something like that. It's interesting. I don't know. This gives me something to think about but at the same time, I do see there being, so in CBT, there is this concept of investigating what's called your core beliefs. Like, what are these beliefs that seem to, like, a lot of these thoughts seem to sort of erupt from? And there does seem to be a difference to me of, like, the belief that you're talking about, which is like the experience of, like, yeah, being gripped by a thought and like belief in a story. But there also seems to be like some standing ideas that I operate with. Like, there are certain assumptions that, like, I'm just operating under generally that are kind of unexamined. And I
Can you give me
could,
some examples?
yeah, I mean, like, I guess I'd have to start, like, I mean, there's really basic ones, like there's really obvious ones, like when I get off this chair, the floor is not, I'm not going to pass through the floor. Like, that's a really, simple, basic one. But then there's, probably more like beliefs around what I believe. I'm trying to think of something a little bit more related to this, like what I believe is, uh like ways I believe it's okay to act, like certain norms socially. Like, like I don't ever think something, but I can tell when I feel like I'm out of step with like a norm socially, and like, and it's just like and all of this can be felt moment to moment in a presence way, the way that you're talking. Like, you can feel the sort of visceral sensation and like the sense in your body that these things are happening. I guess what this comes down to is, do you believe there is, let's imagine if we believe mental game is sort of like there's sort of a two-pronged approach. Like, there's the, how do I experience the feelings? How do I handle the feelings of, like, let's say pressure or, emotions, or like, how do I be present with those in the moment they're happening? Versus, is there any credence to, how do I also proactively work towards, like, I just experience more difficult emotions less often? Because there is, I think, in my view, like, there is certain kinds of emotions that just like become more and more difficult to be present with. For some reason, they grip, like, let's say me, I have my particular, things that will grip me, that can tell me a convincing story more readily, more easily. And there might be something to be said of, like, productive work that isn't in the moment I'm experiencing those feelings, but like that can just be like outside of those moments, where I can like work on what are the things making it so easy to buy into certain stories. Whereas for other people, they would never buy into that. Like, they would never buy into that story. But for me, it grips me. And I think a lot of times that comes down to like certain, like, yeah, beliefs I tend to hold about myself, like what it is that gives me value, what it is I believe I must do. Again, you're right, this is all very heady, but
Yeah, and I can see this is where we kind of like probably have different approaches.
yeah,
And so my thoughts are that, like, difficult is relative, right?
yeah,
What's difficult today might not be difficult later. How we kind of ease that transition seems to be coming from in opposite directions, right? So you find value in exploring, okay, where is this coming from? How did I get like this? What experiences in my life have contributed to me being this way? All worthwhile explorations and great things to know for sure. Personally, that didn't work for me. And so for me, it's the opposite. For me, it's, I want to have the experience of continuing to play through these emotions that I find difficult as they come
yeah,
each time. That's my number one priority, is to just continue to feel myself through all of these, and to let myself have the experience all the way through. And from
yeah,
there, trusting that, like, on the other side of it, the insights about where did this come from and how is this
yeah,
familiar will just kind of like appear in my mind, because
yeah,
I will have actually gone through the cycle, right? So
yeah,
yours is more of a front loaded, let's get familiar with it, let's talk about it. And mine is more of like, well, let me just like run through the gauntlet, and then the past will start to inform me about how it's related to what I just did. So that's kind of how I prefer to approach it.
yeah. I mean, to be fair, like, I do see, like, I agree with all of that, and I agree with, like, I don't even know if it's the case that, like, I would come at it from a different way than that. I think where I stand, it's recognizing, it's honestly, for me, it's more of like from a coaching perspective, I have noticed, and maybe this is just yeah, there's a lot to be said on this, but I've noticed that expecting presence from even myself, right? Like we use the word presence. I am a pretty consistent meditator. This is a very important practice in my life. And the term that gets often used is this idea of being lost in thought, right? Like you're lost in thought. And this is what I would, equate to not being present or not being mindful, if you will, like not being, experiencing the moment as the data that it is. And from where I stand, it just seems to me to be likely that as much as I might try, I think I'm likely to spend a lot of my time lost in thought, right? Like just a lot of like, even though like as much as I would like to be present as much as possible, I will probably be lost in thought for much of my life from this point going forward, right? Like, and so I guess what happens under the conditions of me being lost in thought is pretty important to me, and I guess where I look at it as is like, no, I agree with you. In an ideal, like I would love to just like be able to summon presence at every moment and just like, at that, but then my wife leaves the coffee scooper in the coffee grounds and then I'm furious, and like hooked by this story and yeah, I mean, like I would say better than most, I quickly can like come back to like feeling what I'm feeling in that moment. And in moments of performance, it's really important. But I've noticed with certain people that that presence doesn't come as easily to everybody, like to the same degree, if you will. And so basically I'm wondering if you see any value to that, like if you're going, like there are some things conditioning the world in which you are lost in thought and how you operate in that in that mental state. But I'm getting the sense that you're a pure no. Let's just do presence and
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think that like presence comes less easily to any specific people or more naturally to any specific people. I believe that some people are more deeply ingrained and have been conditioned harder
yeah,
to live in their head
yeah,
more than others, right? But it's not
yeah,
like an inherent trait. I
sure,
think
yeah, no, I agree,
as
yeah,
human beings, we're animals, right? And animals
yeah,
have this amazing capacity to just be like so present in the moment
yeah, yeah,
when called upon, and so yeah, to me it really is just a matter of like and this is something that kind of keeps me from working with a lot of people that initially come to me because
mm,
they'll come to me in this like I'm like 80% certain I want to do it your way, but I also
mm,
like this part of me and I want to continue exploring this and for me it's like that's not going to work
yeah,
because I know that's how I used to live. I have piles of journals that I used to fill out and
yeah,
I used to love writing about all this stuff and write about my experience. And now there's like zero desire to do any of that.
yeah,
And I no longer experience my own life as this like just big, I'm in my head all the time. I'm just living. So
yeah,
having made that transition, I know it's possible. And I know that for me, it only happened once I made that full commitment of like, this is how I want to do it. I want to have the experience and let the insights come. And
yeah,
and so it reminds me of I was doing a group coaching call the other day, and somebody asked me the exact same question. He's like, "Man, why do we keep going back into our old patterns?" And basically, I just said, "Well, can you conceive of like what would you do with all your energy, and what would happen if you stopped caring why, right? What if it didn't
yeah,
matter, right? What if the only answer that you could ever come up with about why you do what you do is being influenced in each moment by how you feel, right? Depending on
yeah,
how I
yeah,
feel, my answer to where did this start is a little bit different. So if that's the case,
yeah,
there's no actual answer that's going to satisfy my mind and make it stop thinking about this and trying to like figure it out.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
that game will just never end,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
That game never ends until we decide that like I don't want to play that game anymore. I want to just go from the assumption that I don't actually know why I'm doing this because I'm doing it,
yeah.
and now I'm interested in changing my behavior. Well, how can I do that?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely. I mean, like I see for me, it's interesting. It's more coming from a perspective of like my coaching experience more than like my own personal desire to I mean, like, I'm in as far as how I approach my own life, I feel like I'm far more in your camp, in the sense of, like, I really, when I, when experiencing something difficult, uh why I'm doing this is kind of irrelevant to me. You know what I mean? It just doesn't really matter. And more importantly, it's all just a story, right? Like, I could, whatever you're gonna tell yourself about why, that's not really here. That's not what's happening in this moment, right? Like, it doesn't really, why this is happening is because some chemicals are firing in your brain and this is what it feels like, right? Like, that's why this is happening. And, like, every moment, like, it's all just led to this, and so I agree with you on that. And I guess I'm not really interested in, like, working with, and when I talk to people, I don't really get into the why as much. It's more just the question of, like, well, if some people really struggle, 'cause in my view, presence is a skill. It's just like you're saying. Like, it's not that, like, no one is more or less, like, inherently um good or bad at it. It's just that there is, like, but I find there are, like, natural inclinations towards it. Maybe you're a sort of present savant, and that's why you don't appreciate this fact as much. But but uh, but I have noticed that there is, like, when discussing with some people, even just through, yeah, like, discussing with some people, the try like, for example, trying to talk people to, like, talk about their experience, like, what is it like to, like, be feeling these feelings, like, talking with that. There's a pretty wide spectrum of the people who actually start describing an experience, and people who are still thinking about it, right? People are, like, still telling stories, still, and then, like, the amount of, sort of, like, steering of this ship of being like, no, 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 that's not what a feeling is. Like, you're telling a story
Mhm.
still, right? And then oftentimes when, doing, let's say, debriefs with people like this, it's like, okay, well, what were you feeling in that moment? Like, were you being present? And they're like, I was feeling like this person's going to run me over. And it's like, no, this is,
Mhm.
again, this is a story. This is, like, this is, and for those people, I have wondered, I guess, myself, and just, like, is there something to be said, not of, like, explaining why, but as, like, are there other levers of action to be pulled on here? Because I think we've all had the experience where we think a certain thing, and it does the thought. For example, I've been caught by certain emotions that I can't really get out of the story of until I feel like I can accurately name it, if that makes sense. Like, until
Mhm.
I can be like, oh, that's this feeling, right? That is thinking, though, right? That is thought. Like, that is a conceptual layering on of my experience. That is not the actual raw sensation of the feeling. But sometimes I've had the experience of not quite being able to get there, not being able to name it, not being able to feel it. Oh, sorry, not being able to feel it until I could kind of name it.
Hmm.
And basically that just signals to me this sort of power. Concepts do have this strange power of being able to, like, possibly allow for presence a bit more. Um, yeah, I guess, I mean, I don't want to beat you to death over this, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just curious about the
Yeah. Like,
potential
thinking's
for,
thinking's not the enemy, and
yeah.
the magic words that I tell people to use are, I'm having the thought that da 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 da, right? So
Mm,
I'm having the thought that this acknowledges that it's a thought, that it's not
yeah.
absolute,
Mm,
acknowledges that it's happening, and that puts a little bit of space between you and just
yeah.
believing it 100%, right? So, oh, I'm having the thought that this guy's trying to run me over. You're actually very present with that thought,
Right.
and with what's actually happening, because that's what you are doing. You are having that thought, right?
Mm,
And so,
yeah.
boom, now here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a really powerful distinction. It's very simple. But yeah, it is to, like, not just, like, being able to give someone it's like a noting. I don't know if you're familiar with noting in Buddhism, but there's like a
Mhm.
process of noting something where you're like, you'll note breathing, you'll note, thinking. That's a common
Oh
one. It's
yeah,
just like
okay,
thinking,
yeah.
noting, thinking. You're just, like, noting what it is in your experience that's happening, that you're noticing. It's sort of like a way of, like, focusing attention, like, what it is you're paying attention to. Uh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. As being really useful. Um, yeah, I wish, you know what? I wish I had my notes right now, because I had other things that I want to talk to you about, but my computer blew up.
Let's just talk about some controversial stuff. Let's
Do you want to talk about something controversial?
I mean, I'm into it, man. Let's stir the pot. I don't know what can we talk about that would get people riled up. That's
I
what
mean,
we're here for.
did you follow this Phil and Doug thing? That's controversial.
Oh yeah, that was good. Yeah, I enjoy. I'm always watching the poker Twitter
Mm,
stuff, and it's very it seems endless, right?
yeah,
Uh, endless. Any day of the week, there's something, right?
it's bizarre.
And I have one client who was in the middle of one of these things, and then a week later, they weren't, and I was like, hey, remember when you were like in the center of that shitstorm on social media?
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's crazy, and I think that this is a excellent topic of whether it's Phil and Doug or Berkey, blah blah blah, whatever. People are addicted
Yeah.
to drama,
Yeah.
right? It's just like there's an addiction to drama of seeing like, oh man, let's see what they plan on. This whole Twitter Spaces thing is
Yeah.
like just fucking insane to me. And like there's like thousands of people. The
Yeah.
amount of like human productivity that's getting lost in just like listening to these Twitter Spaces day after day where nothing happens, and it's just people arguing with each other, right? And so I want to point that out, not because I think that like you're wasting your time or anything like that, or that you shouldn't be doing it. No, I read the tweets too. Um, but it's very informative, because if you want to understand why you are not kind of reaching the levels of performance that you believe you should be, there's
Yeah.
a pretty good chance that it's because you are kind of addicted to this up down pattern of just
Mm,
experiencing life in general, right? So it's not I'm not saying it's because you're wasting time on social media, you should be spending those hours studying. That's not it. It's
mm,
that there's a part of you inside that naturally is gravitating towards, oh, when something's going well, I'm gonna like create something to make some drama, so that makes it more interesting, and bring myself down a little bit and sabotage a little bit. And it's just a really fascinating part of the human genetic code. I don't know how it works out, but it just seems to be like a glitch in the human operating system, to where we can't exceed our thresholds for like how peaceful and happy and good we can feel before we start to do something dumb to just bring it back down,
it is
right? And
bizarre. It is one of those like cliches that you hear about like people self-sabotaging and like things like this. And having experienced, my own versions of these tendencies at various points in my life, and like having to like sort of get beyond it at some point, it is a weird thing where uh I've recently had a decision actually where I noticed, like, in the aftermath of it, I can't get into the details of it, but like it was like a business decision where in the aftermath of it, I was like, I didn't really want to do that. Like, I don't know why I did that.
mm-hmm.
And like looking back on it, being like, that was just like, it was looking back on it and like thinking about how I felt in that moment. It was this sense of like, yeah, it was fear. It's weird how like you can have this sense of like, yeah, fear making you do something. This actually leads me into what I remembered was one of the things I want to talk to you about, which is the value. Why does there seem to be such a connection between like having a clear idea of what it is you want and connecting with what you want? And why do I mean, seems kind of obvious, but why does that fuel so much? Like, because it's so easy, I think, for people to lose touch with what it is they actually want and to get caught up in what am I trying to avoid, right? And that seems really important.
Yeah, and this ties back into this exact same topic, right? Because let's say
Right,
you
right.
you wanted to make it to beating 2K online or 2550 live, and now you're doing it, and then oh man, I stopped studying, or oh, like I'm not putting in volume, or I'm just punting every time I play. Well, that's because that goal and you connecting to the feeling behind it, the
Mm,
excitement, the inspiration, the love
yeah,
of
yeah,
the passion of the game behind it was what drove you to perform at those high levels. You get there, there's no vision for what you want next that could create the next level of fuel of inspiration for you to go do stuff. So you just do nothing, right?
yeah.
Or you just punt and bring yourself back down, bring yourself down. Now I know what I want. I want to beat this level again. I know how to do this. I know how to access this feeling. Bring it back up. Oh, here we are again. Oh, don't have any other goals. I'm pretty happy here. Okay, and back down we go, right? So on and on it goes. And this is why people get stuck in the spin cycle of never being able to break through to the higher stakes. It's a lack of vision about what's next. It's also a lack of enjoying the feeling of what you've accomplished. So when you get to that goal, most people have no idea what it means, no real understanding of what it means to genuinely fully be present with the happiness, the enjoyment of it, right? So being present isn't just about like moving through your sadness and the fear. It's also about enjoying feeling good and the success that comes with it, because that is what opens you up to go to the next level. You don't enjoy that feeling, you're going straight back down.
Definitely. So what's interesting to me is, how do you splice this from, though, the sort of tendency to sort of prolong satisfaction until something is achieved? Because what my initial thought, I remember when I was first reading some of your stuff, and I have since like sort of, I think, spliced the nuance of it a bit better. But initially, when you talk about what you want, it struck me as the kind of like hustle culture of like, you need to get here, like you need to, and I don't think that anymore. But how do you, like, what is the difference between having a clear idea of what you want versus delaying your own happiness until you get what you want, if that makes sense? So yeah, I guess it's like, I think it's natural for people to believe that like connecting with what they want also can mean connecting with, or at least this is what I thought initially, again, can also mean believing I need that to happen before I'm like happy, satisfied, fulfilled, etc. When in reality, I think we would both agree that like starting from a position of satisfaction is really the best jumping off point to going to get the things that you want. But that doesn't mean you have to like let go of the things that you want.
Yeah. I mean, people, if people are adding that story to that of like, oh, I have to wait to be happy till I get there. Well, that's, I didn't say that, right? That's part of the conditioning of like, that's the belief that for a lot of people that comes along with having vision. So yeah, I'm huge on celebrating small wins and creating internal momentum that way. I strongly believe that there is no limit. There's unlimited happiness that we have access to inside of us, and so we can just keep feeling it. There's if I'm happy now, it doesn't mean that I'm going to become complacent tomorrow. It just means that I'm enjoying feeling good right now, and using that good feeling as fuel to move forward again to the next day. To me, that it actually speeds up the progress when you are consistently appreciating yourself, loving yourself for showing up exactly how you're showing up, and that's what makes the big difference over time.
Yeah, and that is part of like the hard language of a lot of also mental game advice too. It does seem sort of like even not even mental game advice. I guess this is kind of mental game advice, but people who often talk about just like discipline and sacrifice in this way that's almost like self-flagellating, right? It's just like buckle down, hate yourself. Like, it really, like, if life's not about feeling good in not the sort of like indulgent sense, but in sort of like a full savory sense, then what are we doing here? You know what I mean? Like what are we even doing? And like, it's really, that was actually a really useful insight that I had specifically reading your content, was recognizing the importance of something that I felt like I was naturally prone to. And so therefore I think I just like under acknowledged the importance of it, which was like having a goal, like, and like having a clear idea of like, I want that. And it's been really interesting, like meeting and working with more people and seeing how common it is that people think, avoiding things is the same as pursuing something,
And there's actually this whole wave of thought in poker where it's not cool anymore to like say that you want something, because you got to be like not results oriented, and you got to just say, oh, I just want to like put in this many hours, and I want to have a really good process, and I want to go to the gym this many times. And it's almost like people are afraid to admit that they want something, which is just as impossible to control as do you think about something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
So, we want what we want, we think what we think, we love who we love. It
yeah,
is what it is. We can't change that. And so trying to pretend that you don't want something uh is denying yourself honesty, authenticity, connection, fuel for
yeah,
actually making it happen. Now, wanting something and expecting something are two different things, right? So can
yeah,
you just enjoy wanting something and
yeah,
enjoy
yeah,
the truth of it without expectation, and just say, yeah, I really want this. That feels good. What do I want to do about it? Right? That's much different than saying, oh, I want this. If I don't get it, I'm not lovable. Right?
yeah,
Those
yeah,
two
yeah,
very,
yeah.
very different things.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, this is important. It's like even as like it's important to slice this in, I think, in personal qualities too. Like I would I would like to be like an infinitely patient person. I would love that. I'm not that. I probably will never be that. But it's important, I think, to have like the goal of patience, because otherwise when difficult moments show up, I mean, like my interest in mindfulness, my interest in presence, my interest in all these things have come out of my desire to try to achieve, the way of treating people that I would like to treat people, and without that, I wouldn't have a compass or map to even discover the things that are valuable to me. It's you mentioned wanting to talk about something controversial. Do you believe in
Yeah.
free will? Do you believe in free will, given everything you've said?
Um, it depends on how you define it. Probably not
Yeah.
is what I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, is the
I
short
don't I don't
answer.
either. I don't either, but I
Yeah,
feel like that's a
I would
controversial.
say my best guess is probably not.
Yeah. I mean, it really
Yeah,
seems.
you can always go to a level that makes it not free will is kind of my interpretation of it based on my limited amount of time I've spent thinking about this.
Yeah, well, I mean, also, I think like if you spend, I'm trying to like frame myself well for this camera, but I think if you spend any like time being aware of what's happening inside you, right? Like if you be being really aware, it's really all just kind of happening. You can kind of see that it's just all just kind of appearing from the blackness and then going back into the blackness, and then
Yeah,
your thoughts, feelings, sensations, all of that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
awesome.
prefer to I prefer to think of life as just going through us rather than
Yeah, yeah,
as like I'm making everything happen. It's
yeah.
just so much more fun that way, and less stressful.
Yeah, I think more accurate too. I mean, I know you haven't, but I'm recently reading I can't remember his name now. The guy who wrote the book on the hemispheres, The Master and His Emissary, he recently
Yeah,
wrote
yeah,
two. I just got his two volumes called The Matter with Things is what they're called, and it's just two massive books about all about like basically how the Western way of viewing the world, it's very related to your work. I think you'd really enjoy it. But like the how we've misconstrued the part of ourselves that knows how to act on the world as the part of ourselves that knows how to understand what's happening. And it's like two big volumes, but I'm really, really enjoying them. And it's yeah, it seems very much the case that yeah, things are just we are just sort of like the witness to all of these things that are happening. And I'm very surprised you're not deeper into Buddhism, if I'm perfectly honest, the way you
yeah.
discuss
People
things.
tell me that. People
Yeah,
tell me all the time. They write me messages. They're like, "Yeah, you just distilled Buddhism into like an easily digestible way
yeah,
to approach poker." And I'm like, "Great, thanks."
yeah,
But yeah, I've never actually studied it. There's just, I mean, I've spent lots of time reading different philosophy stuff, but
yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's just like I just say stuff that I believe is to be true based on all the experiences that I've had and all the
yeah,
mistakes that I've made, and
yeah,
and on all the ways that I experience what creates a feeling of feeling really alive and feeling really content and happy, and then try to spell it out in words that I hope that other people will connect with. And
yeah,
yeah, it's served me well, so I don't intend on diving
yeah, yeah,
deeper
yeah.
into any specific philosophies anytime
No,
soon.
I mean, it makes sense because I think also being free from the framework of like this is Buddhism and
Mm,
free from like the hierarchy of like what it means to succeed within this framework of Buddhism. And like this is all very thought heavy, right? This is all very
mm,
like honestly, these are all things that get these are strong impediments to people in meditation. This is a lot of the stuff that like if you sit with teachers, honestly, like a lot of them are spent most of their time trying to like decondition all of this anyway, like all of this like
yeah.
like you're not a Buddhist, like you're not sitting here like you're not trying to achieve these levels, like you're just like it's and so like it makes sense that it has served you well because it's there was a teacher, I'm trying to remember his name, but he used to forbid his students from reading any Buddhist literature or any Buddhist philosophy because he was just like, no, you're getting it's called spiritual materialism is what he coined the term, like spiritual
Yeah,
materialism. Yeah. He's like, you're just like you're getting too caught up into like what things can I collect, like what spiritual knowledge can I collect when it's really just and so it makes sense. I did not have that luxury, and I'm still on the rat race trying to become a good Buddhist. But
There you go. There you
yeah,
go. Well,
but
there's still time. There's still time.
yeah,
Yeah, it reminds me because I lived in Boulder for 10 years, and
Mm.
there's very
Yeah,
well-intentioned community for higher levels of consciousness out there, and I saw it over and over. People, they're like trying to do it right. They
yeah,
know what the proper words are to use that would signal
yeah.
to everybody
Yep.
else that they are operating at a higher sphere of
Yeah,
consciousness. And I can just see it. It's like, yeah, you're full of shit, man, because you're saying the words,
yeah,
but I know that you don't love yourself, and I know that
yeah,
this is just fake, right?
yeah.
And it really turned me off from a lot of groups that I had hopes for having fun with, because
No,
I'd
yeah.
get
I
there
mean,
and I'd be like, you guys all suck. And it's
no, it
like,
makes sense. I mean,
nobody's
like
real. Yeah.
it makes sense. Like I've sat many Buddhist retreats, and there's like you get a lot of. I mean, I've been that guy plenty of times. I mean, like it was. I kind of hold it fondly because, like, for me, the witnessing of that experience of like the things that I did and sort of realizing the bullshittery that was happening, and like I don't know, now it views me as a part of myself that like I've
For
conditioned a more
sure.
positive relationship with, but it makes sense. I mean, like you see a lot of that, and it's really difficult to like, and that honestly is why I respect the teachers so much, because they're surrounded by it so much, and
Oh yeah.
they respond so skillfully. Honestly, like the only reason I would recommend a retreat, in my opinion, if you ever consider doing a retreat, is just because some of the teachers who sit these retreats, in my opinion, are truly some of the most magnificent people that I've ever met. Like they're amazing, and like I've yeah, just being around them and watching them interact has been
Yeah.
so insightful for me. But
Yeah. You get to the level where everybody's just projecting all their stuff onto you.
yeah,
That's kind of like the highest level, and to where you can just feel that and not engage with it is to
yeah,
me, that's like the most beautiful form of leadership
yeah,
and mentorship and guidance you could ever give somebody, is not
100%.
engaging with them when they're doing that. Yeah.
Yes, and I have had that experience and have handled it quite poorly. So that's why I have so much respect for it. It's tough, man. It's tough to
Mm.
like, it's an interesting feeling to meet with somebody who you feel like is projecting. I don't know what it is quite that like feels so difficult to deal with, but I've had that experience multiple times where I've met somebody or I'm like working with somebody, and it feels like pressure. I guess that's what I think about it. Like it feels like a lot of pressure to be a specific thing. And it's for my psychology, particularly, one of the things I've learned is I take that's one of the things I get caught up in very quickly, is like really trying to like rise to like whatever expectations someone else is putting on me. And so
Mm.
I've had the experience of yeah, so that's I respect it. Yeah, because you do like if you do group on some of these retreats, you'll do like group sessions, and yeah, you'll watch people just like clearly putting so much on these teachers, and these teachers just handle it with such grace. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I did a lot of that too in my kind of earlier years,
yeah,
especially during going through the training. And I remember she's one of my best friends now, and she was like, I know what you're doing. You're doing this like coach persona, and I want you to just stop. And I was like, okay.
yeah,
And she was right, and I was doing that.
yeah,
I
yeah,
was trying to like blow her mind and
mm,
like give her the life-changing thing on that
yeah,
call. And so the more that you can, as the coach, facilitator, mentor, whatever role is, the more that you can just relax into, I'm just here to have a good time and be myself.
yeah,
That's when the magic happens. And
yeah,
that's, I've had enough experience of that to know that, like, that's all I'm here for. I'm
yeah,
not here to do anything other than to show up, have fun, play, be completely myself, be completely honest,
yeah,
say everything that's going through me, and trust that that is exactly what the person needs. They don't need
Yeah.
anything specific to happen. All the great stuff happens right then and there.
Yeah. It's an amazing experience in life to like have like these deep like experiential evidence of like these cliches that you hear, and one of them being like just be yourself. Like it seems like such a silly thing, but
Yeah.
no, totally. I mean, like this relates to poker too, right? Like you can only be when you're playing, you can only be what you are. You only know what you do. You only like you can't, which it sounds so obvious, but constantly, people have the experience of just trying to like I recently switched from playing cash to playing tournaments. And like, it wasn't until I was talking through a spot with a friend that I realized I was trying to adjust my strategy based on things I didn't know.
Yeah.
And then I was like, how you can't do that. You can't adjust your strategy based on things you don't know. Like, and it's yeah, it's really
Yeah.
it's one of the most honestly like one of the most beautiful gifts of learning to be present is like
Yeah.
the experience of things that are like deeply true is so much more fulfilling than like thinking them. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the yeah, like
Yeah. And,
uh
and like that spot, if you wanted to break it down in shorthand, is just, oh, I got scared. And that was my way of trying to like cope
mm,
with it, was making adjustments to
yeah.
stuff.
Mm,
Because what I see when people go out there and they come up against, the name players, the TV players, the
sure, yeah.
crushers, they don't lose as much as they lose because of the skill gap. They
Yeah.
lose more than they should because of the fear
Yeah.
that's coming up inside them when they're playing against that
Mm,
player, which causes them to kind of scramble and try and do a bunch of stuff that they have no
yeah.
idea about, instead of just kind of coming back to themselves and, I'm going to do my best and hope it works out, and trust that
Yeah.
like this is all I can do is be me, play my game. If they did that,
Yeah.
they would fare so much better. But instead they psych themselves out. I got to do something special. It's this person. It's this person. I got to do something really extraordinary to beat them. And
Mm,
then that just like doubles, triples the gap in terms of
yeah.
like what their deficit was versus what it ends up becoming.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. It makes sense. It makes sense too. It almost like adds to the mystique of these players too.
Yeah.
Or
And then it
like,
snowballs, right?
yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
now the player is like, now there's like, oh, look how much he's crushing everybody.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, yeah.
then it just gets bigger and bigger. And that's I'm confident that's a lot of what Ivy was doing for like all those years. Is yeah,
Oh,
he
that's
was really,
amazing.
really good,
Yeah.
really, really good, but his capacity to just stay present and stay
Yeah.
inside himself while everybody he was playing with was just like freaking out
Projecting and just
and
yeah.
projecting onto him,
Yeah.
and he was just able to just stay in himself while they were all doing that,
Yeah.
was more of a factor in him
His
winning all of the money he won than
yeah.
the actual amount of like knowledge that he possessed that they did not have.
Oh, totally. That makes so much sense. Helmuth. This explains a lot of Helmuth, I think. I mean,
Yeah.
although I wouldn't describe him as a very present person, but
Yeah.
the from the outside, people the acting towards him because he's Helmuth. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Because you
Yeah.
see people act crazy towards Helmuth in tournaments. Like
Yeah.
they do wild stuff towards him, and you're just
Yeah.
like, oh, geez. I had an experience actually. What's funny is I had a student who I used to stream online. I don't know if you know this, like play 2K
Hmm.
on L
Yeah.
online
Yeah. Yeah.
and stream. And I had a student who they knew like my bet sizes, so they always knew who I was at the table, and I would be streaming, so they knew who I was. And they were always calling me down in these crazy spots, and like I kept having it, and like I was
Uh,
like, "What are you doing?" And
mhm.
and then this phenomenon is starting to make more sense though. It's just like spots where it's like I can't bluff here enough if I wanted to, like I'm not
Mhm.
showing up here to be able to bluff here enough, even if I want to. And
Yeah.
but I have this
It's
image.
great.
Yeah.
I love this because it's just the way that we get up into our heads. I
Yeah.
have two excellent friends. We all used to play in the same player pool in Colorado, and one of them would always pay the other guy off like all the time. And the other guy was like, "Look, dude, you never fold to me, so I'm never gonna bluff you ever.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just letting you
Yeah.
know."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then when he said that, the other guy was like, "I think he's leveling me." So
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
continued
He
to
keeps
keep
calling
paying,
him. This is
right?
the time. This is the
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
And he's like, "No, I
Uh
swear to you, I'm never gonna bluff you." And he never did, and he got paid off every single time. Yeah.
Oh
crazy.
man, that's too good. Are you moving back to Colorado? I know you had mentioned it.
No, we're in Canada for for a good while. It's been
Okay.
great. Yeah, I love the increased amount of land per capita that each person gets here. It's like I
Yeah.
think it's like the same size as the US, but with 10% the population.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's pretty great. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It is, yeah, it's 33. I mean, granted, I think 90% of it's uninhabitable in my
Uh,
opinion, but
yeah, I mean, that's the thing that no one wants to talk about. But
yeah.
what I found is the secret to living in Canada is in the winter you leave. That's
Yes, yes. Where do you go?
this last winter I went back to Colorado for a bit. I went
Yeah,
to visit my family in California for a bit, and we actually went out to the west coast of Canada, Vancouver Island, where it was
nice,
much warmer. So yeah,
nice.
so you just don't stay when it's that cold.
Yeah. I didn't know you were from Colorado. I'm from Colorado. Are you from
I'm
there?
not from there. I moved there when I was like 28.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
because I just keep going north because I'm less and less tolerant of heat as I keep
Yeah.
getting older, and so Texas was like out of the
Isn't that
question once I hit 28.
the opposite of what's supposed to happen? Like,
I don't
aren't
know.
you,
It's just
yeah.
like, and then living in Colorado was amazing, but then I was like, even the summers, like the sun is burning my skin a little
Yeah,
too much.
yeah.
So let's go north again. So
How old are you now?
turning 40 this year.
Halfway done. Halfway done. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh man, it's possible. It's certainly possible. Yeah.
It could be more. Yeah, who knows?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm only wondering because you said you were there when you were 28. I was wondering if you were in Colorado, playing in Colorado at the same time. It's very
Maybe,
possible. I used to playing.
maybe.
You played Ameristar in
Yeah,
Blackhawk.
I was just playing the 30-60 limit every day. After I moved
Oh,
here.
we were
I
totally near each other. I never played 30-60 limit because
okay.
I thought that game was bonkers. I didn't understand it, but which it was. It's
Yeah.
50-100 now.
Yeah, I mean,
Or
that's what it became eventually, right? When
yeah,
code was
yeah,
a thing, it was just
yeah,
50-100 every day. But
yeah,
yeah, when I moved there, I was out of poker. And I just moved to Colorado because it looked amazing. And
yeah,
then I was like, wait, there's a casino. I was like, hold on, there's poker. Wait, hold on, this is the best game I've ever seen in my life. I guess this is
yeah.
what I'm going to be doing a lot of. And then so I did that for years, and then got into mixed games, did the whole thing, and then here we are.
It's always wild when I meet somebody like yourself, where like now that you're describing this, we almost certainly overlapped tons of
Mm.
times. Like I played in Colorado, and I used to play the 2-5. I never
Hmm.
had five
Yep.
ten because there's the $100 cap. I used to
Yeah.
play like the 2-5 hundred
Yeah.
dollar cap game all the time, and it's always kind of a bizarre experience to realize like
That is funny.
we were crossing paths,
I'm
and
sure you were like standing next to me in the cashier at least
yeah,
once.
oh yeah, yeah, that is bizarre.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, man. Well, I think we did it. I think this was a good
All right.
conversation. Yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Unless you have anything you want to berate me about, let's see. How long
Um,
did we do this for?
no, man. I feel good. I feel like I got all the good stuff out
Yeah,
there.
I set you up to like,
Riled some people up.
yeah,
This is my whole marketing campaign, right? Is I just want everybody to know that like this is very much you're either all the way in with me or
mm,
you don't need to like come find me. And it saves me a lot of time to like
mm,
get out on the podcasts and just like be real about this is how I do
yeah,
it. And if
yeah.
you're interested in doing it 100% of the way, man, I'm confident I'm the best at what I'm up to right now, especially in the poker world. Nobody's
That's
really
amazing.
doing it this way. And
Yeah,
if not, there's plenty of people who are a good fit for people who want to do it another way. So I
yeah.
like to just like put the strong opinions out there and see what comes
No,
back.
man. I believe it. I think the world of you. I think you're a great.
Mm,
I love your stuff and I love your content. It's always great
mm.
to talk to you, and I recommend you to everybody. I do mental coaching myself, and people ask me who they should
Yeah.
go to. I say, dude, go to Jason. So,
I appreciate that, man.
yeah,
I really appreciate that.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Oh, this time I'm gonna do the plugs, right? So I didn't
Yes, do
plug
the
last
plugs.
time. All right,
Yeah, you didn't
here we go.
plug.
Here we
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. This is
Yeah. Send it.
a podcast guest 101. You
Yeah,
gotta do the plugs at the end. All
yeah.
right. You can follow me on Twitter, Jason B Sue. But really, like my favorite thing in the whole world is to write my daily email list. I don't know if you're on that, but I would recommend you check it out.
Yeah.
Where every day I just write stuff that I think is amusing, fun, insightful. on how to be more present so that you can win more money and feel less stress and enjoy your life more, enjoy your relationships more. And yeah, that's like probably the thing I'm most proud of, because I know that like everybody hates getting like promotional emails, but there's a lot of people on my list and I get them open 50% of the time, and I'm that's like the thing I'm most proud of.
No, that's
I
awesome.
do.
No, that's great. Yeah. Awesome. What other plugs? Any other plugs?
That's it, man.
That's
I
all
just
the
want
plugs.
people. I just want people to read my emails. That's all I care
Yeah,
about.
that's it.
I do the Twitter just so people will read my emails.
But you
That's
want to
all.
up the percentages though. You want good people to read your review. You want to up those
Yeah,
numbers.
exactly. But we got rid of a lot of them throughout the course of this conversation, so it's
Yeah. Totally. All right. Awesome.
yeah.
Great, man. Well, it was great talking to you.
Uh,
Yeah. Until next time.